I'd like to go over some of the most common scoring errors and how to record those on the running record sheet. Now, you can look on the internet, you can look on Teacher Pay Teacher, you'll find lots of different sheets that you can download with all the different coding and scoring errors at a glance. But what you'll find is none of them really are all inclusive. They don't have everything that you might see. And so sometimes you'll have to sort of improvise. But for the most part, there's a pretty consistent format. So I'd like to show you that now. So first, there's accurate reading, right? Whenever a child says a word correctly, you simply tick that with a check mark. And that's really important that you do, because if kids see you writing only when they make an error, they'll start to get a little bit of a complex about that. And of course, there are no errors accumulated with accurate reading. Now, with substitutions, what you do is you're going to take the word that the child says. So for example, the child says the word worry, but the actual word is worried. Okay, that's a substitution, and that's one error. Now, there are some occasions when a child might say worry and then say wary. Okay, that's still only one error because they only missed this one word, even though they made multiple attempts. Okay, that's called a substitution. Now we'll move to a self-correct. So with a self-correct, you might get something like this. The word is worried. The child said worry, and then the child self-corrected, and just indicate that with an SC. Occasionally, there might be a time when the child says, he was worry, and then again self-corrects, but does it on the repeat. So they do something like this. They repeated the whole line and then came back and self-corrected. Okay, so it sometimes will look like that. Okay, for an insertion, which is when a child puts a word in that wasn't supposed to be there, you'll use a little caret and then something like a or the tend to be the most common insertions. Okay. The other way that you can do it is you can put the word they said on the top and then a blank on the bottom, indicating they said a word when nothing was there. That's called an insertion. Again, an insertion is one error. And I apologize, I forgot to tell you that a self-correct was no errors. There are no errors when you self-correct. Okay, let's move on to some of the other ways that you might have to code. This is called an omission. Omission is when the child forgets to say a word. So the word is there, but the child doesn't say it. Okay. Try that again. Try that again is most typically used when a child skips an entire line of text. So again, the line was, he was worried. And the child skips the line. You can prompt the child by saying, try that again. And when you do that, the child then went back and got all of these right. Okay. This try that again is one error. Even though they didn't miss any words when they went back, the whole motion of telling them to try it again counts as an error. In this case, with the omission, when they forgot the error, that's also going to be one error. Oftentimes, kids will repeat words. So you might have worry, and then they repeated it. You just put the R. They repeated it multiple times. You put two R's. Yeah, that's all I can think of there. Okay, and again, that's zero errors. Okay, rereading. So with a reread, they might go back to the beginning of the line and reread the whole thing. And again, a reread is zero errors. Okay, they might appeal to you. So the word is worried, and the child appeals. Okay, so if you think about whatever's on the top line is what the child's doing, and what's on the bottom line is what you or the text are doing. So appeals do not count as an error. Okay. Sometimes the child appeals, and you do something like this. You try it. Like you just give them a little encouragement. Again, no error. But sometimes the child will appeal. You'll say you try it. And eventually you'll end up telling them. When you tell them, that in fact counts as an error. Sometimes kids will do this. They'll spell aloud. So they see the word wave, and they'll go W-A-V-E. As it is right now, that would count as an error. However, if the child then says the word wave, you'll put a check mark next to it, and it won't be an error. So then it would look like this. And there's no error. Okay. Just a few more. We have sound out. So whenever a child says a sound, so again, they're looking at the word worry, and they say "wuh," and then they say worry. Okay. Or perhaps they actually sound out a larger chunk. So they see worry, and they say whir, and then they say worry. Okay. Those are not errors because eventually they get them right. So those are 0 errors. There is the possibility, though, that a child might do something like this. Worry, wuh. And then they tried were. And then they said wary. Okay, then that is going to be an error. Or if they never pulled it together and said the word, they just left it as individual sounds, that would be an error. And then finally, a pause. A pause is just going to be represented kind of by like a slash. And you basically are going to add another slash for every 5 seconds that passes by. Okay. And pauses are not an error as long as they result in the correct word. So this is some of the coding that you'll be using as you do a running record. My suggestion is that before you practice the very first time, that you have these codes close by so that you can remember.